Tonje Lange, welcome to the interview. Thanks very much for talking to me. You are, it says here, mental health and well-being expert. Tell me how you got involved with helping people with their mental health.
Well, the thing is, there's nothing like a bit of experience for yourself to get you to understand
Oh dear.
how it works for everyone else. And I think most of us, although it can be very different in our experiences and life choices and upbringings and all that, I find that most of us will have a similar path when it comes to how we develop and how we think of ourselves and what are the good choices and what are the bad choices. And I got sick when I was 17. I was what happened? Well, it's a long story, and I'm not good at making long stories short. But my grandmother, who was kind of like a second mother to me, she died. She passed on when I was 17, and that triggered a depression in me, like a very deep one, which is then turned out took them quite a few years, but it turned out to be something they call bipolar 2, which is like a mild, depends on how you look at it, but it's like a version of bipolar where you just mainly get really, really depressed and you don't go up. So through those years, and I would say it took about, I'd say a good 10 years before, and then I got the right medication and I learned how to, especially, which is why I enjoy coaching others on the same issues, because I found that there's one thing is medication and how you do that, but the other thing is how you manage your life, how you manage stress, how you work with yourself, and those things I find to be very similar, no matter what your background is or what level even of issues you're having. I find that those things are more or less the same if you want to have a better quality of life. When you have everyone's got issues here and there, so it depends on how deep they go. But for me, that whole learning curve was quite intense. But it took me,
So, up until you were 17 and your grandmother died, then there were no symptoms or signs.
No. Which is why everyone was very baffled, and why probably. But I have come to understand that it takes a good while for doctors to figure out the bipolar diagnosis. So sadly, it is sometimes up to 10 years for people to get the right diagnosis, especially with my kind, because you just get depressed. Like, you get mainly very heavy depression. So I guess...
What does it mean if somebody is bipolar? What does that actually mean?
Well, yeah, I just assume that everybody knows. I'm sorry. So if you're a bipolar 1, right, that is the old-fashioned sort of manic depressive, it used to be called in the olden days, where you get, you can go very low or you can go poof, very, very high. I'd say, sometimes people think they can fly, it goes really, really high up there. So when you don't have that, when you only have the very deep lows, and then sometimes you get like a medium type of, you go higher, but it's not to the extent where it, ruins your life or you go completely bananas. So it's harder to spot, I think. So I guess it was, it was a good few years of just people thinking, or doctors thinking, that I had, I don't know what you call it nowadays because it changes all the time, but major depression is something that's very like common. Those people have it. And it's, to be honest, it's not very different. It's just so for example, a person who has a depression, it would be the same, pretty much the same feeling, except you might get a bit more heavier version. So, but then what happened is I was lucky as well. I had some very good doctors, or like a very good psychiatrist and a very good therapist, that they kind of spotted what no one had spotted before. So when I got to them, it all kind of fell into place. And once it's the same with everything. Once you know what you're dealing with, it's easier to get started, figure out what to do, find your markers, where you should be, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. And but I think that the fact that I kind of went through a bit of a period where they weren't sure, or I wasn't sure, we weren't sure what was wrong with me. So that has given me a lot of experience sort of within the entire field, I would say, so that I have an understanding maybe of many of the similar things. But it wasn't nothing what's wrong with me, or what you want to call it. It's just, as a child, I was like super happy. I am a very, I'd say, sort of like a perky person. I'm not, people would never guess there's anything like depression-y about me, but that's a very typical thing for many people with bipolar disorder, is you'll be fine, and then something will trigger it. So, you know, they've got more and more research on it nowadays. There's a lot about epigenetics and like how I might have had these genes that I have and it would never have triggered, but then something will happen and it will trigger it in you. So that's why, you know, I think I've got, you know, it's a good thing because I had such a lovely childhood and everything I was super sensitive though. I'd be like very, very, you know, cry for, you know, when Disney movies are horrible. Like, why would you make them so sad? Or, you know, seeing homeless people on the street, sad music on the radio. So I'd say, even though I tend to forget that, I was a very, very sensitive child. So there's that aspect, but I was just very happy mainly, and just, which is why it was very back to myself as well, baffling when it happened. I guess if you've had difficulties growing up, you'll be more prepared for something difficult coming your way. But
interesting. Do you think that everybody has some sort of mental issues, if that's the right word? You know, because life is hard for most people. I'm not putting your life down whatsoever, but people.
No, I would say that's a very important issue for me, or whatever, if you want to call it that. I'm very into the fact that you shouldn't measure someone's pain or whatever against someone else's. I remember I had a period when I only just gotten sick where I thought, you know, oh, my life, it's so terrible. And then if someone came along and said, oh, I'm feeling very, you know, depressed, I would be maybe a bit offended, or I'd be like, oh, you don't know what suffering is, you know. But as I've gotten older and more experienced in life, I find it's a pet peeve of mine where people won't recognize that, because I think that, you know, your life is your life, and if you've not experienced anything more horrible than this, then that is the most horrible thing you've ever experienced. So it will feel horrible for them, you know, even if maybe for another person it might feel like that shouldn't be such a big problem. So I think that you should, you know, it's important for me to meet people at the level they're at and not, you know, discount their issues or their experience just because it can be different, and, you know, the levels can be different.
Sure, understand.
Yeah.
Mental health is very much in the media at the moment, isn't it? I mean, even members of the royal family are involved and so on, with helping people. And do you find that publicity a benefit to people? Do you think it's making people come forward for help?
I do, and I think there are two aspects with it. I think it will make it easier, you know, in society for people who have these issues, which is, you know, it turns out once you start talking about it, I remember that because I've always been very open about it. When I was young, when I was 17, I was still in school, and I had to quit, but I was very open because I didn't want to be worrying about who knows something, who doesn't know, you know, so I wanted to take that away. And it's incredible once you open up and are honest about what's going on. Everyone's got issues. Like, everyone has an uncle who's, you know, done this or is very ill, or my mother's got issues or themselves. So I think that's also where I got a lot of my experience from, in dealing with other people's issues, because as soon as you open up and you're honest about it, other people will come forward and just be honest about how they're doing. Yeah. And I think so that's the one thing, is more openness in society will make it easier for people, but also for people that are actually, you know, needs to be diagnosed. I would say probably that what happened to me might not have happened now, because I would have been assessed differently. I would have been put on not that see, the medication that I was on now is considered not so good for people. So that kind of triggered me as well. And it might, you don't want to go, hindsight is 2020, but there's a great chance that I would never have gone to hospital. I would never have gone that far down the road. And then, but I don't, no regrets, as to say. I don't,
Well, that's good.
you
Well,
can't be wondering about that.
do you think you're very professionally feeding your dog at the moment, who's hunting? And this is brilliant. At the same time, you're multitasking fantastically. Do you, he's lovely, is it he or she?
It's a girl, but she just looks like
Okay. Do you think having a pet helps with people with mental issues?
I do. And I used to have cats, because when when you're not on top of your game all the time, a cat is easier to deal with. And a cat's, well, in my mind anyway, a dog requires a lot more attention, as you see, and grooming. And just more, but you also get more love back. And I'd say for me, it was actually, as we'll probably talk about later, about the True You Hub, but I'm very great friends with the people in, and so Emma is one of my very, very good friends, and she was, to be honest, the one that talked me into getting this dog. So It was quite a funny story. She was saying, I was waiting, they sent me an email, they were like, the puppy's now, do you want it? You have to answer in 3 hours. And I was like, I don't know about this. And Emma was like, get the dog, do it. She was like, I'll give you the money. I said it was not about the money, but she was like, no, this is very, and she we've got a very good connection. So she kind of knows me on that level, and it's made a massive, I would say anyone who were able to be, you have to be capable to take care of, obviously, the animal, but having that love in your life and just that unconditional, just acceptance, I think is a massive thing. And I think pretty much, I would say any person in the entire universe should have a dog, but especially if you're struggling, and because a lot of people with mental health issues, or in general, I find in society these days, is what I see with people that I talk to that don't have, issues as such. There's a lot of loneliness. People feel alone in their lives. Sometimes even if they're part of the family, part of the group of people, they can be sitting there inside feeling very, very alone. And so as a pet, having a pet around you, that's a different kind of love. You just, it's unconditional. It's like you never even have to worry about what they think about you or anything like that. So
do you talk to your dog?
I do talk to my dog. It's she's getting a bit confused because obviously I'm from Norway. So when I'm in Norway, I talk to her in Norwegian, but when I'm here, mainly I'm around English people. So she's getting to be very bilingual about lie down and sit and be quiet.
Excellent. Like so what's sit in Norwegian?
It's sit, so that's very good. Oh. That's very handy.
Okay, that's easy then. Excellent. Okay, well, we're cat people at home, as you probably know. Yeah, we've got 6 and another one that comes
You've
for
got
food.
A whole crew, haven't you?
Yeah, so hopefully they'll keep me sane. Okay. What would you say to somebody listening to this who thinks, I'm not sure whether I need help from somebody such as yourself, or a psychiatrist or something? How do people eventually realize that they need help?
Well, I think one of the issues there is I think people wait too long because they're still, like you say, it's open now. People are saying it and talking about it as if there is no big deal. It's not such a big deal, but I find that there's still a big stigma attached to it, especially going into treatment. I find people are reluctant, which is why, for one, I think people should, if they need. I think that everyone should go to see a psychologist at least, not a psychiatrist. I think that, to be honest, I think there's a bit of over medication going on in society, but a therapist, it doesn't have to be even it's a double-edged sword for me, because I don't like it when, people that have very little experience or credentials, or what you want to call it, just are like giving out advice left and right, which can be, sometimes the quality can be, iffy. But I find that kind of, which is good. One good thing about, I think, good thing about the internet as such is that not only can people get therapists easier, I've seen here during COVID that, like, say, this girl I know here, she's got an American, therapist that she gets through something called BetterHelp, I think. And because one of the main issues is that there's not enough people will, and because it saddens me, because it takes someone a good while to reach the point where they're like, right, I'm going to go for it. I need a professional help or a practitioner. And then they try, and then they get a letter in the mail saying, yeah, well, you're going to have to wait 9 months, and it's very discouraging for them. So that's why I do also see the value in more of a coaching type thing, which is like what I do is I'm not claiming to be, a professional psychologist. I'm just using my experience and saying, this is how it was for me. And, can you relate? And I find that, like I said, even because people are people, like most people will have, unless they're in a very extreme situation, the levels will be different, but we all want the same basic things, right? We all want to be loved and to be happy and to love ourselves. So I find that, there's a lot of good can come out of both talking to someone that kind of knows or have been through the same thing, and also being in a community with like-minded people that, you can talk to. They've got groups such as ours, or there's like message boards. There's a lot of stuff. The resources now that are available compared to when I was 20 is insane. Like, it's such a big difference. So,
do you think in the past the tendency was for doctors just to prescribe some sort of drug? If you went to the doctor.
I think that one of the issues I think now is that they don't have enough therapists, so they send you to your regular, what's it called in England, GP, your doctor, and they don't really know that much about it. They don't have the time, so they give you, they prescribe you something. But when I got sick, see, that was it in 1999, I'd say 97, and that's when Prozac was like the new thing. It was the big thing, happy pills for everybody. And that's what they did with me. They were like, let's put you on Prozac. And it turns out that Prozac is like the worst thing you can put a bipolar person on. So I've even had, like I said, if I hadn't gone down that road and gotten, I think, a lot worse from the medication, then I might not even have had to go through a lot of the stuff I went through. So I feel like people, and I think they're still very, how would you say it? Like, quick to get the pad out and just write you a prescription. Okay. Whereas, for example, just diet, well, I'm not saying everyone should exercise. I know that's annoying, but like just moving your body, just learning how to release emotions in your body. For me, yoga, mindfulness is a massive thing, and I will never stop going on about it. I know people get tired of it, but there are so many things that you can do in your life.
The non-invasive and not taking drugs.
Yeah, and I think, I am very like, I keep thinking, like, why do they not teach this in school? Because it's like, I like to say that, to prevent it rather than going in at the end and trying to fix something when it's already very broken. Yeah. I think, just basic self-care and loving yourself, and taking, in this society where everything is so noisy, and or especially for kids when they have all the iPads and the internet, and it never stops, does it? Like, all the info coming at them. Yep. To just teach them how to be still just for a little while, take 5 minutes, breathe in. That you'd be amazed at some of the results I've seen with people just putting in basic stuff, and that would keep you from being on drugs for 5 years. So it's a big passion of mine.
Yeah, I can see, and It's all very, very interesting. I know nothing about any of this, and
I
it's
know lots about
you
it.
do. Well, that's good. You're the expert. I'm just the guy with the microphone. Um, the True You Hub is this wonderful organisation, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that's all. Most of that goes over my head as well, because there are several experts, lots of experts for covering
Yes.
different subjects in the True You Hub that people can consult. And you've done a blog on that, and you're very involved with the True You Hub. What would you say to somebody listening to this who thinks that maybe they need some help, and maybe the True You Hub could help them? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say, obviously, because there's such a good mix in. I'm biased, of course, because it's it's my love, and I love the place, and I loved it working there. But there's a lot of the basic tenets of health are in there. So, for example, sleep hygiene. A lot of people around, like, it's not big being a big issue of mine, but a lot of people have issues with alcohol. That will definitely, when I started building myself up and taking responsibility for my own health and mental, and sort of, I changed. Literally, my life is 100% different being on the same medication, but having changed my circumstances. And these circumstances, or the people that will help you with these, pretty much all the things that I have changed are in the True You Hub. So, for example, I don't really drink alcohol. It's important for me to get enough sleep and a good sleep, and then there's the diet aspect, and then there's the spiritual aspect. So it's all of my darlings are in there.
So the hub, that's the good thing about the hub, isn't it? Because it can help people with in all sorts of directions, as I understand it, which then has incredible results, which is
And it's
fantastic.
like, it's a low, I would say as well, it's that it's a low threshold. It's, you can come in there, and you if you need a vent, and it's not that easy. I found I've been very lucky, I think, in my life, with having very, like, some good close friends that I've been friends with since I was, the age of 7 or 8. But I find, seeing around the world, there's so many people that don't really have close friends of that kind. And then for them to be able to just be in a group, and obviously being on the internet will give you a bit more of what do you say, like, a bit less, you're a bit more anonymous. So you don't, you can choose the level of which. It's not like you're standing in a square telling everybody about your problems. So I find that, the combination of having a group around you that you feel a part of, that you feel you can share, and you will, there's always someone giving you feedback. And even if we're different, even if it's something that the other people can't really relate to, there's support there. So, and I think that aspect is incredibly important. It's just that, to be able to support each other across, class, countries, all that stuff. So, and also I find that, for example, they'll write something, and I can reply to them, for example, and I can just, we can have a chat with my perspective on it and my experiences. And it's not the same as going to a doctor's office and signing up and, going that whole way, when a lot of times I don't think that's even for everyone. It's not necessary for everybody. You can go very far just by having people around you that care.
Understand. Tonje, thank you so much for the interview. You've been it's been fascinating once again. All the ladies, all the experts in the True You Hub are fascinating to me as just a mere bloke. But you've been very informative. Thank you very much for talking to me. It's been very helpful. I'm sure people listening to this will be helped as well. And of course, they can contact you and the other experts through the trueyouhub.com. Thanks once again.
Thank you so much.